Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a managing partner at Newberg, Gore and Associates, where he coaches CEOs and leaders of high-growth startups. He focuses on helping leaders improve their leadership capabilities, build their teams, and create effective company cultures. For over 20 years, he has led leadership programs in 80 cities across 15 countries for the Fortune 500, the military, NASA, Burning Man, to name a few. Startup clients include Teespring, Earnest, Creative Market, Orbital, Insight, Bus.com, and many more. Previously, he worked with leaders at Disney, Starbucks, NASA, Honda, and others. He brings a unique combination of backgrounds in business, leadership, and psychology. He has taught organizational psychology at Sophia University and negotiations at Harvard Law School as a TA. Welcome to the show, Jason Gore. What's up,
Thank you,
brother?
Matthew. Good to see you.
Oh, man. Yeah, good to see you too, man. A little background. We were chatting before that I was lucky enough to catch part of your talk at Burning Man, and you were at the end of a panel, and then you had your own thing. But I remember having to come back in to make sure that I signed up for the email to stay connected. And then I got to dive in a little bit more of your work, and we connected again. And then you send me your bio and the complete picture, and I was really blown away. I had to shorten a lot of that. It's amazing, brother. Do you want to give everybody just a little bit of background on some of the work that you've done and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Happy to share a few stories. But let me just first say why. Like why I'm here, what I really care about. And I'm pretty pessimistic right now of kind of the human race and the way that we're organizing our reality. And what I see is that there's a lot of people that care deeply, but don't know how to lead other people to make good stuff happen. And so, the reason I'm on your show, the reason why I'm trying to give as much of this information away as I can, is because we need good leaders in this world. And especially when things get harder, and I'm guessing that they will, that leadership is going to become quintessential for our success individually, as families, as communities, and as a larger society. Honestly, like if we could just get to the place where we could guarantee fresh water, drinking water for the future generations, that would make me happy. So a bit about my background. I think I should go back to my childhood for a second. So my mother had a tumor in the Broca's area, the part of her brain that produces speech. And so I got very sick of, waiting for her to write notes so that we could talk. She could hear, she could understand perfectly. She simply could not come up with the words to express herself. So she would end up writing because that part of her brain was intact. What I didn't know is that was essentially teaching me how to read body language, that I would start to guess what she wanted to say because I got impatient of waiting for her to write it down, and I would get immediate feedback through pupil dilation, through her facial muscles. I didn't know that was happening, but it taught me how to guess, like what she was thinking. Now, it turns out that that's actually a huge part of what leaders miss. They're so busy kind of getting and inspiring people on their vision that they don't often create a dialogue. So I studied persuasion in college because I really wanted to learn, like, what was I doing that other people couldn't seem to do so well? And I got very lucky, went to UPenn, and ended up getting hired as more or less a psychologist in a large consulting firm. And I was put in the military and defense business unit, and so immediately got exposure to the Air Force and the Army, to power plants, and what I saw was kind of amazing. I remember I was assigned to this one power plant. There's actually 7 power plants that were part of a consortium. And I was working with an ex-nuclear submarine captain who knew everything about nuclear power plants because that was his forte, and I was coming in as a psychologist. And day one of the job, we were supposed to interview a whole bunch of people back to back. And he got sick that day. So I called my boss up and said, hey, I assume we're going to cancel the meetings today, right? And he's like, no. They're really hard to arrange. Like, you have security clearance, no one else can join you, so you got to do these alone. And I'm like, I know nothing. I don't know anything about a nuclear power plant, for God's sakes. Like, what am I supposed to do? He said, well, first of all, don't pretend like you know anything. You don't. You're just going to make a fool of yourself. So, they say big words, like, just admit that you don't know that stuff. And then just ask really high-level questions like, what's having you lose sleep at night? What are the things that you see could be improved? What's going on there that's not working? And paraphrase back what you hear, right? Just try to summarize in everyday language what you're hearing, and just take notes. That's all you could do. And you do the best you can, and that's all we can hope for. So I go in, and the first person I meet with, he's kind of a 40-year-old, kind of chubby guy with glasses, and kind of what you would expect in some ways. And I open up with, what's having you lose sleep at night? And he summarizes back to me all the things, and I'm specifically working at the inventory practices of spare parts for these nuclear power plants. And he kind of shares all the things that are going on. I paraphrase back to him, and he's like, yeah, but really what the issue is that my manager's not listening to these ideas. And I know the higher-ups would care, but they're not even getting the message across. And so I paraphrased that back, and he just keeps on going until he kind of summarizes it in such a tight package of, this is the number one thing, that if we change this, this power plant would be performing so much better. So second person, kind of same thing. What's having you lose sleep at night? And paraphrase back, and pretty soon he says, I shouldn't be telling you this because you don't have the right clearance, but, and he starts telling me all these other things. And I paraphrase that back. And the thing that really caught me at the end of the second interview was he asks, wow, you seem to know a lot about power plants. How do you know all this? And it kind of cut me off guard because I was like, wow, I know nothing. But simply by asking these questions, listening and paraphrasing, I was building trust. And what I saw is I was helping them create value, like in honing and synthesizing their own ideas into really kind of what are their next steps. So anyway, I packaged up these interviews and I presented it to the board of the power plants, and they think that these ideas are absolutely brilliant. And I'm in this question of like, whoa, okay, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I just came in, know nothing about nuclear power plants, ask a bunch of questions of their engineers and inventory parts managers. I package up those ideas, present it to senior management, and they think it's brilliant. Why the heck do they need me? Like, what's going on there? And what I learned very early on is, paraphrasing one, but two, that communication doesn't happen, especially communication up. And there's a lot of brilliant ideas out there, but the right people aren't hearing them. And so if we just do that in our organizations, I think there's going to be a lot more value that gets created. So that's one story. I could keep on going, but that led to other projects and other projects. And what I could tell you is, after working for one company that had 60,000 employees and working directly with the senior management, what I saw was there weren't a lot of good listeners up at the leadership level. There weren't a lot of good communicators, a lot of good decision makers that could manage a group process. So I went back on my MBA to figure out why not. Like, why are all these bullies getting to the top? And what I learned was essentially the communication issues are not a business problem. They're not a leadership at the top problem. It's actually a human problem. When we look at where we learn to communicate, most of us learn how to communicate in dysfunctional families. If the loudest person wins, that's our style, and whatever those styles, if the family is conflict averse, we're going to bring that conflict aversion into the business world. And families are families, and some are more violent than others. Those impact us, and those impact our communication styles. And so my job now is mostly helping people communicate in a way that produces the best results. And that's really what leadership in my book is. Yes, inspire with a clear vision, but then really communicate a lot so that the team can execute on that vision and change courses very frequently and constantly to make the vision happen.
Interesting. The first thing that comes up for me was that feedback that you were giving. I have a friend of mine, Julian, who's going to come on the podcast. He's founded Brain Training Pro, and his story is fascinating because he lost his memory. and he had to work with the top in neuroscience, artificial intelligence, everything, just to get his memory back. And
Wow.
when he got it back, I kind of call him Spock because he's smart, but it's like a different thing. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
he's kind of got right and left. And he gave me that exact exercise, and he said, "Okay, when you're communicating with a client or any human, when they talk to you, summarize what you heard so you understand it, and then just give it back to them." And what happens, and I invite everybody on the podcast, everybody who hears this, to try this. It's very fascinating because
Totally.
you're like, okay, just so I understand, you did leadership for Fortune 500 companies. You tried this exercise, you had great results, and then you went to go get your MBA, and then you stop, and then they'll add clarity on whatever they had said, and they'll go deeper.
Mhm.
And what you're helping them do is refine their own process and really give them clarity. So it's really powerful. And the thing that you're speaking on in the leadership role is that they're really going to feel heard, and they're going to
Mhm.
feel valued. I remember reading the book The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari 7. I think he was talking about leadership as well. Remember
Ah,
the author? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I don't know the book. I heard of it, but I don't
Yeah,
know it.
yeah, it's really good. And he said the number one motivator is having people feel appreciated, not money, not
Yeah.
anything else. And if you can go in. So for you in learning this stuff, what I'm curious about is, do you feel that if you can go into powerful companies, big companies that have a lot of influence, really help them learn how to communicate effectively as a whole, then that company can do more good on a mass scale? Or are you more passionate at this time about sharing these principles, which I'd love for you to get into, with the masses, so then they can improve their lives? Or do you feel it's one and the same?
I would say it's both and. Inside of given companies, I honestly think that two things are important: leadership skills and ethics. And I don't teach ethics, and I hope that that arises naturally. But I mostly have chosen working with young leaders, mostly kind of the Forbes 30 under 30 type of leaders, because what I see is that these younger millennials are bringing ethics in a way that I haven't seen in the larger corporations. That they really care. They're passionate about their people. They're passionate about the culture. They're passionate about the product that they're bringing into the world. And what's also really interesting to me is that these young guys, right, and girls, are going to be successful or not, but they're going to start another one. And so the more skills I could give them, the more they can model those skills for other people. And when they do have wealth at their disposal, I know that they're going to use it wisely, and use it for good of the planet. So there's that piece of it. But also, there's so many passion projects out there, so many people wanting to do good and be part of other teams that are doing good. And I've seen a lot of executive directors in nonprofits that are totally inspired, but don't have the leadership skills to either use the donations effectively or to motivate their team and work with their team to produce the best result. And so, whether it's a corporation, a nonprofit, or an individual, or a community, like if we could just be better at leading, more good stuff can happen.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with that. Well, it's interesting because I'm looking through. You have a number of topics, and you've literally worked at the top. So I'm over here trying to figure out, what the best question I could ask a person like
Uh,
you. You work for NASA, the military, huge companies. Okay, so for a young leader, what are some of these principles? What I know you do a whole thing on it, but maybe you could talk a little bit about each principle,
mhm.
and how we could apply it in whatever way you want to share that.
Sure. I think that the biggest lesson learned before I get into the what I would call the seven core leadership principles or practices is a learning mindset. Right? Is can we go in as a learner? And that's really where innovation is going to arise. That's really where team connection is going to arise. And learning not only about what the thing that we're producing, but learning about how to lead. And can we open up our own kimono to accept that there's going to be domains that we're not as competent and that we have some blind spots? Can we learn about those blind spots about ourselves and be a learner? Because what that also provides is for our team members, our direct reports, if it's in a company structure, Like we want them to learn. We want them to take our feedback to them about their communication skills, right? And so if we do it first, it also creates a space where we're all growing together. And so the more we can learn together as a team about how to communicate, how to work together, how something I did had a negative impact on you and what I could do differently in the future, the more that the whole team is going to develop and become great together. And then as they grow, have a culture that's going to continue to expand. As an outside guy, consultant, coach, there's only so much I could do. It's the inside folks that build the culture and how they communicate with each other, how they lead meetings, how they clean up the issues, and how they talk to each other when good stuff happens and bad stuff happens. That's what creates the culture of these teams. And so it's that communication that's really important, and that willingness to learn and willingness to step into those uncomfortable conversations to learn and kind of bring your best.
Amazing, brother. Yeah, well, I had that written down for a future question because we're definitely going to get into it. I think that what you're speaking on is a culture and a common understanding of how that works in the spiritual game or the consciousness game. They might say, working on your shadow, and that would
Yeah,
be just getting negative feedback, and
totally.
if we can embody the four agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz and not take
Uh-huh.
it personally.
Love that book.
The challenge that I'm sure you're working with in the companies is people do take it personally. They become attached to their role in the company, and if you're sharing something that they're essentially identifying with the role. So it could be, Matt, you're the coach or the marketer, and then you didn't do this job, and so then as I identified to being the marketer, I can't hear the feedback, where it
Yeah,
just seems like you're creating a common set of agreements that if everybody can see them and agree upon them in some way, you can create a very cohesive structure. Um,
exactly.
so I think that's wonderful. You can either launch into some of those core
Uh,
principles or talk about some of the uncomfortable stuff because, you know,
totally.
for me, that's something that I'm good at, but I don't like
Mm,
it. People,
yeah,
will comment on it, but when I see something in the consciousness space or whatever the space that I'm in, I naturally just say it.
yeah.
And then I'd rather just get it out the best way I can and do it, in a sense of like non-judgment, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing this and feeling this, and I just feel it in my body. And that's what I know. And I just want to put it out in the air so we can all kind of juggle it around, and then it'll
Totally.
sift down. But if I don't, it just like eats at me. And I think it's
Yeah,
really like from my dad. And I know that the most common thing is that people don't want to say anything. They don't want
right.
confrontation, and I don't want it
Right.
either. I just I just have this compulsion. I think it's from my dad, and that's what he's like. He's like French Canadian. He'll just say the thing
Yeah.
instantly, but he has
No,
no compassion.
totally. I think that most people that I work with try their best to preserve relationships. And so if someone's doing something that's really pissing them off, they might say it the first time, but if they don't get the result they want, they tend to go underground. And like you were saying, that kind of builds up over time. And the issue there is, one, nothing's changing, right? They're not getting the result that they want. But the second thing is, while they think that they're preserving the relationship, what's really happening is resentment is building, right? And disconnection and loss of trust is actually increasing. So over time, the action that they took by not having the conversation with the intention of preserving the relationship sabotages the relationship and makes it much worse. And it makes it much harder to climb out of that hole later on if you haven't shared it early. So totally agree with you. I also want to mention one other thing, which is, you talked about kind of the blind spots in the shadow. One of the great things I love about leadership is when you put yourself into a leadership position, you have access to a lot of feedback if you're willing to hear it. And, it's very difficult to know our own shadows. Like, there's really only a couple places where we could identify our own shadow. One is we look backwards and we see a history of negative stuff, kind of dead bodies in our wake, lost relationships, lost trust, and kind of we got to look at what are we doing to contribute to that. So that's one way, right, is look historically. But the other way to identify your shadow is to get feedback, and you start to see themes. People saying, wow, you're arrogant. You're like, I'm not freaking arrogant. What are you talking about? But you hear that enough times and you're like, okay, what's going on? Why do people think I'm arrogant? Right? I'm just trying to prove my point. I'm really confident, but I'm not arrogant. But then you start looking into it and you realize, wow, maybe I'm not listening as good as I could. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I'm actually sharing my opinions as if they were facts to prove my point, and it's shutting my people down. And you start to see, wow, I can now see why I'm showing up as arrogant or whatever it might be. And a little bit of a little change in behavior, right, where I'm just as confident in my opinions, but I change a little something, right? I own my opinion as an opinion, or I really start to share my opinion and then listen deeply and dig for what I'm missing or what I'm not seeing. Changes can change the mood of a conversation to change that assessment.
Yeah, brother. I totally agree. I think that's a really important point to make because sometimes from my perspective in looking at the articles that come out in consciousness or personal development on the shadow work, they always talk about the importance of the shadow work, and I think it's important. Sometimes I feel like it's really embellished, but sometimes I think it's very simple. And this is one of those times where I'm getting clarity for myself, where
Mm-hmm.
let's say somebody gives you feedback, which is you're arrogant. The shadow work would be, they say, dive right in. So I say, Jason, we just got off the podcast. We hung out in Denver and we went whitewater rafting. And then you're just like, Matt, did you know that you're an arrogant asshole? And I'd be like, I am? What? And then you just go right into it to the feedback. And I say, Jason, what did I do? Why do you think
Yeah.
that? Where is it? And that for me, it's like I always feel so bad, and that's part of that feeling we don't want, right? It's like, oh, like I feel dirty when somebody
Mm-hmm.
gives me feedback like that, but I want to know so I don't do it again. And it could be just how you communicate with a friend. I have a really good
Yeah.
friend that I made on the podcast, Daniel, and he said something to me once, and he's like, "Oh, you're always razzing me," but his background, he didn't have like, let's say, bros, hockey guys. He wasn't used to it, so I'm always like, just razzing him a little
Uh,
bit, and he wasn't familiar, and so I was like, dude, he's like, you're razzing me all the time, and you could see it bothered him a little bit. And I was like, thanks for sharing that. I don't need to do that. If that's how you want me to communicate with you, thank you for sharing. But I felt really bad because I don't want I don't want my communication with my friend to be hurtful.
right.
And so I did feel like an ass. I did not feel good, but I went right into it instead. And I
Mm-hmm.
just got my medicine. And then I was able to adapt and be aware, in our future communication. And for me, I think that is a very powerful and humbling process if you can actually take those steps, but it can be that simple.
Totally. And appreciation is one of those things. Like some feedback I got a long time ago is some of my best people that felt unappreciated. And what I realized is like, wow, okay, I think you guys are great. I don't appreciate you all the time, like with specifics, because I assume that in my book, you rock the world. And I've learned to up the ante on appreciation, especially for the people that are really rocking it, and that I would do that a lot for the people that were lower performers because I wanted to be able to give them negative feedback too. So I wanted to make sure they felt appreciated. But for my rock stars, I wasn't doing that, and so it's amazing. Like I'll just do that now. Someone who I think is a rock star, and like what good is my appreciation to them? They know they're rocking it, but I'll offer them something, and consistently they'll say, "Wow, that was incredibly valuable," and I just it changes the mood of the conversation in such good ways. And so now it's like, now that I've kind of identified that as my own little shadow, I use it, and I appreciate people all the time, and I love creating that mood where it's like I'm appreciating you, Matthew, like for giving this podcast to so many of your followers, and it's like, and what it does for them and the broad audience that you hold, right, and that you're able to capture this broad audience of people that are interested in all sorts of things, but at the core, there's something that you're offering them that they're saying yes to. And so it's like
Mhm.
that, those appreciations, like have people self-reflect, and it just changes the mood.
Mm-hmm. Well, what that made me think about was I've been looking a lot into cryptocurrency, coding as a language. I suck at coding, but I need to do it,
Mm,
and just different things. So little tiny squares, okay, in consciousness. And so you get the feedback, which is the shadow part. It's a hidden square of reality and awareness. You are just unaware. That's why the shadow is.
mm,
You're not aware. It's dark. Then they bring it to light, which is like this thing that doesn't feel good because it's your limitation and ignorance. You just don't know. And then you look at it, and then you basically uncover that square and you open it up. Now you've seen it, and now because of that feedback, looking at the shadow, you can now upgrade your own consciousness and awareness and apply it to become a more whole human being. And that's why the process is scary, because it's like, it never ends, and that's
totally.
what, like, something like Burning Man experience, or for me,
Yeah,
psychedelics can be that thing where it's like, oh my God, like, how much do I not know? Like, oh, like, geez, this is, and that's where it can be scary. So you
totally.
can you can reflect on that, and if you want, and then I'd love for you to dive in a little bit about
Yeah.
these principles, or a few of them.
Well, we're on talking about feedback, so that it's actually a natural blend to the first one, which is inspiring with a clear vision and roadmap. And if we're trying to inspire people, we actually need to hear from them what's inspiring to them and what's not. So many times leaders they see the big picture, and they're personally inspired, and they assume that other people are going to be inspired by the same things that they're inspired by. But we got to find out, you know, what inspires different departments, different groups, and hone our message for that audience, for that specific audience, and just that inspiration will get better and better and better. But a lot of people, they might be inspired with the high level, but if there's not a roadmap, if there's not a how-to, how are we going to make that happen, and it doesn't feel realistic, then hey, they're not all that optimistic and they're not that inspired. So the first one is simply inspires with a clear vision and roadmap, right? Are we embodying and sharing a compelling vision of the future and communicating that so that people see how they fit in, and that there's a clear roadmap to get from where we are to where we need to be to make a difference, to do the thing that we want to do? Um, Part of that is also constant renegotiation, right? Because priorities are changing. And so if we set up this vision, we're going to end this roadmap, like we got to be flexible there, right? And we got to be able to move, especially for startups. We're going this direction. Wow, we lost our big clients here. We got new clients over here. We need to be able to adjust and realize that the product is going to be reshaping itself constantly, especially in a startup. So that's the first thing, right? We're asking people to work hard. We want them to work in an inspiring way, and so they need to be inspired with the vision and connected with the vision, in a way that they understand how their piece really fits into what the company piece is. I mean, it might be even, the front desk person. Like, how does their piece fit in? I was recently told about a story about McDonald's, where they have a culture where they don't really smile. That's a way of service, and just the folks at the registers were told they had to smile. Now, I actually don't know if this is true or not, but you look at what that one person at the cash register is doing to support the culture that McDonald's wanted to create. And it's like connecting the dots for people is really what Inspiring with a Clear Vision is about.
I love that. um you know I remember the book now. It's by Robin Sharma, and it kind of goes back to the um creating inspiration. And what comes up for me is that, if somebody gave me an option right now that was like so good, and we're going to make such a massive impact on the planet, I would be the secretary. I wouldn't need to be anything special. Like, I'll go there and do any job that
Mm-hmm.
is, if you can see the vision of the
Yeah,
highest service. And I think that what you're talking about is you can be the secretary, but you know where this thing is going, and you're a part of this bigger mission. It's not just,
mm-hmm.
hey, this is your task and this is it. It's like, no, you're the secretary for this company that is going to feed 1,000 people, or, we're going to clean up the oceans, or we have technology
Yeah,
that's going to help all this amount of people. And you're like, heck yeah, I am. And
yeah,
you're a part of that culture, and that's going to really inspire them to, on their own, want to, put in more effort.
totally. Look at the Burning Man organization. it is more or less volunteer created. Yes, they have a central HQ, and yes, there are some paid staff, but you got basically 50,000 volunteers that are creating the city, and they're all inspired by that. They put so much energy into that because of that inspiration and the contribution that it makes. Some people, their whole year revolves around the gifts that they're going to give at the event, whether it's building a structure, producing sound and producing experience, producing some art, whatever it might be, or just volunteering in the cafe. But that they're inspired to do that because they're part of this larger vision.
Yep, 100%.
So the next
Okay,
two leadership practices kind of go hand in hand. Second is listens with openness and curiosity, and the third is speaks with transparency and authenticity, right? Listening and speaking, right? The essence of dialogue. And I think that most people tend to lean one way or the other, right? They tend to be more, focused on getting their point heard and getting people to buy in on something, or they tend to be really good listeners, but maybe aren't so good about sharing their opinion, especially when it's not popular or it's going to create conflict. So there's both here. And it's rare that I see a person who has to work on both. They usually have to work on one or the other. Listening, right, is a skill that frankly requires mastery. And every listener can get better no matter where you are. But it's essentially bringing curiosity. Someone attacks you, give you really negative feedback that you don't like or you totally disagree with, or they don't have even the context to give you that feedback. We want to defend ourselves. But in that case, it's no, listen. Be open to critical feedback and dig, why did that impact them that way? What are they seeing that I might not see? And just really listening to ideas fairly regardless of who's presenting them, empathizing with people even if you disagree, but making sure that people feel heard. And even then, if you make a choice down the road that's contrary to an opinion or something else, at least they know that they got heard, and so that they're going to support you, would be more likely to support a decision or something that's kind of against their interests. And then on the other hand, speaking with transparency, we talked about this a little bit earlier, it's scary, right, to have the uncomfortable conversations of giving negative feedback or addressing challenging issues or expressing where you stand on something when it's not very popular. But the goal here is to share your opinion, right, even if it's going to be difficult. Share it well and respectfully, but to do so in a way, because if not, you're withholding information from your team, right? And if the team makes a decision that doesn't include that information, that might be the wrong decision. But more importantly, you're also missing an opportunity to get aligned. If you're thinking one thing and the team's thinking the other, let's talk about it. How did you get into those differences? I remember I was watching an argument at NASA about how to inject fuel beneath the booster rocket. And I was watching two really smart people, obviously, right, argue about very, very different approaches. And it was really funny because neither party was listening to each other. And every time that one person would speak, the other person would share their viewpoint that was different. And so the first one would just reinforce their idea even more about why the other guy was wrong. And they just weren't getting anywhere. In fact, it was funny because they weren't even listening to each other, right? They were just trying to prove their point, and all their words were wasted because no one was listening. And so I interjected and I said, hey, how about if we just take turns? How about if we really spend some time listening to John, understand why he wants to do this vertical spread, and then we'll listen to Steve and understand why the horizontal spread feels better from a combustion perspective, from his perspective. And it actually took a long time. I didn't think it was going to be that long, but it was a half hour each where they shared, all sorts of mumbo jumbo that I didn't understand about, the spread of the fuel, the air fuel ratio, the combustibility, the speed. There's all sorts of things where they were talking about, above my head. And at the end of the day, they both understood each other, and I think they both learned something new about how the other person was thinking, and it got them on the same page to figure out the best solution, rather than kind of talking at each other. They were kind of talking with each other in a new way. And it's we all have different opinions, we all have different perspectives, we all have different data. But until we get to the place where we could hear what the other person is saying, and they could hear what we're saying, we really can't have a productive dialogue. There's no way we could get to the best decision or find a good way forward until we get to that basic baseline. I parachute into a lot of organizations where there's conflict, and about, I would say, 85% of the time, all I do is play traffic cop to get people to listen to each other, right? To get a common baseline of what's the data, what do we know, what do we think, and what is our expectation of what's going to produce the best results. If we could just get to that level first and then get into decision making later, it's going to produce better results every time.
Yeah, yeah, man, 100%. It comes back to that listening thing. And I'd like to offer as well that this applies to families. If you have a family, and this applies to everybody in daily life, if you want a really strong family structure, a really strong community structure, it might be a little bit challenging to share the principles, but if you embody them, and one of the
Yeah.
things I just wanted to touch on was the sharingness with openness and transparency. And again, just because it reflects my life, it's because it's something that I do. And sometimes I'm like, should I share? Am I an a-hole? You know,
Yeah.
um, and I think that it's important because what one level exists where people are sharing, and it's this energy, right? They're sharing out of passion, and it's this anger or frustration, or when your body's feeling that energy, you're probably not going to share in a way that is fully congruent or you're heard. It's going to be very emotional. So if you can first kind of learn to just take the feedback or the challenge of whatever it is in business, life, family, son, daughter, community, go backwards and just really see it from their perspective, and
Totally.
just really get into that and be like, okay, cool. And then get to a space where you can offer the feedback in non-judgment, but you're clear where you stand,
Yeah.
and then you offer that, and then you see their reaction, and then you get a very clear view on where they stand.
Yeah.
And now you have all of the pieces to make to repeat the process. And then sometimes, where a lot of the times, if you're bringing in a higher level of awareness and you keep going back, or you're not even higher, just different view, you can see, the challenge being some people don't want to hear it or something like that. And then, so what
Yeah.
would you recommend for that? Because I can see some people in business organizations or families where they're going through the process, and, their son, mom, crazy neighbor, crazy employee is just like losing their stuff, and they're not embodying any of this. Do you have any strategy
Yeah.
for any of that, or any feedback for that one?
Well, you just said a lot that I want to respond to.
Oh, good.
And first of all, I'm going to say with children, those are our future leaders, and the more we can encourage them to have confidence, autonomy, to view their opinions, the better. I just saw a situation a couple weeks ago where a little 3-year-old said, "Dad, there's a spirit being over there," and the dad said, "There's no spirits, honey. What are you talking about?" And it kind of broke my heart because I watched, her creative mind, whatever she was seeing or experience, get shut down. And it's like, regardless of our own beliefs, it's like, well, I don't personally believe in spirits, honey, but what are you seeing, right? So that we could each have our experiences, and we're not imposing our experiences on each other. Now, there are ethics and values that we do want to insist upon, right? And that's where it's really important to speak that way. But even when we share our opinions, if we could own them, right? We don't dump things on them. Like if I say, Matthew, you're an arrogant, MF, what is something or another, right? It's like I'm telling you what you are, and that's actually, well, I don't know if you're arrogant. What I could tell you is my experience. What you just said there, like when I heard that, I'm making this up, like I noticed that my body contracted, and I kind of have a story that you're really arrogant and that you don't care what I have to say, right? Now that's where I own it, and it's very difficult to do that in a highly emotional state. So sometimes the notion of sleep on it for a night is great, but let's not sleep on it for a year and not say anything, unless we're agreeing to step away from that relationship. But if we're going to be in relationship with a family member, someone at work, a friend, a community member, we need to step in and have those conversations effectively, which we'll have to do another program on that if we want to really talk about effective conversations. But to answer your question, what do we do when someone else is not emotionally solid? They're not centered, and they're saying things that might be insulting or otherwise tough to deal with. What I've seen is it really takes two people to start a fight, right? And one person can do an amazing job of navigating someone who might not be the most skilled communicator. And so one is like, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, think about what do you want to create with this person? Slow things down. Maybe take a break, but slow things down. Now, I will say, if there's any threat of violence, if there's any physical threat, right, great, step back. Let's not have the conversation now. Take care of whatever you need to feel safe. But with that aside, right, if we're having the conversation, give the person a benefit of doubt. Like, I always say that the more emotional person should probably share first, because they can't really listen anyway when they're that emotional. So they're going to say a lot of stuff. And what I found is if you paraphrase what they're saying, they'll have said a lot of stuff that they don't mean. I remember there was one time where I was leading a meeting, and I shared some bad news about a program budget. And the leader, who most people were really scared of, basically said, Jason, you don't know anything about this. In fact, you've been here 6 months. I don't think you've contributed one iota to this project. And just kept on going off. And people, like, when he stopped, the room was silent. Like, people didn't know how to react. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to that Jedi mind trick, paraphrase. Okay, so what you're saying is that I don't know shit about this project. I haven't contributed one iota. And I, paraphrased back some of the language that he used. That was pretty harsh. And, I saw him steaming there. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I'm sorry. I'm just really pissed off right now because this is not the result that I wanted. And having to go back to ask for more budget on this is going to be really difficult for me. And then he shared a little bit more deeply, and I was like, okay, that worked, right? And we got out of that meeting, and people were like, dude, you rocked it. It's like I couldn't believe you just didn't break down right then and there. Like, he tore you a new one. And I'm like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Just like, sit in the fire and see what's going to happen here. And yeah, I mean, what's the worst case scenario is I get fired. But at least I've spoken my truth and did the best I could. So let the more emotional person speak first, right? And have a dialogue. Like, have it be all about them until they calm down, right? Until they feel heard. And, you don't have to agree with them to listen to them, right? Hey, I don't agree with what you're saying, but let me first understand if I see what you're saying. You're saying that when I did this thing, you lost trust, it pissed you off, you don't feel like you could ever trust me as a friend again. And, but we're having this conversation, so I assume there's something you want here. I personally would love to clean this up and navigate how to maintain our friendship. In fact, how to strengthen our friendship through this, right? And reframe the conversation into the vision that we want together. Right, and then go back into the conversation and share it. And then, at some point when they're running out of ammo and they've said their truth, great. Then it's time to bring in your data. Like, hey, let me tell you what I saw. When you told me that you weren't going to go to the show, I assumed that I could sell your ticket, and I didn't even think to ask. You told me you weren't going, and that I could do whatever I wanted with the tickets. I actually took you at face value there. What I didn't know is that you'd be really pissed off if I brought this person, and that's the last thing I wanted to do. Just to really express in an authentic way what you saw, what your experience was. And if they don't listen to you, maybe they have some more bullets, and great, you put that onto the side and you hear them out, and then kind of go back to your view. Right, but there's a dialogue, and there has to be listening. Otherwise, if they're not listening to you, stop talking, right, and see what they need to say before they can listen to you. And ideally, you could be in a dialogue. There are certain circumstances where the other person doesn't want to be in a dialogue at all, and those are a lot harder, right? To try to preserve that relationship or rebuild it. But if you are in dialogue, it's because both of you care about something. So go back to that common ground and start building from there.
Amazing, amazing, man. You're touching on the same thing again and again, but every time you do it with a new example, my understanding of it grows. So, when you have this blowout or this person and you're communicating with them, and you allow them to speak and paraphrase, the first thing that comes to mind is whenever someone is giving you a bunch of crap, it's probably their crap. They're probably not mad at you. And if they're mad at you and it is your fault, they still don't need to like yell at you or blow off steam, or you know what I mean? Like that's not
Yeah.
okay. I've seen people in the car business lose their mind over absolutely nothing. And I've seen a different human being stay chill as a cucumber when somebody messed up so badly, you
Yes.
know? And so it's a choice. So people, if they're shooting shrapnel at you, it is always their crap, no
Totally.
matter what.
Yep.
Now, could you be the catalyst for that crap? Absolutely. You could have totally
Yep.
been the ammo for that.
Totally.
But then when I think about it energetically, and this is where I'm going,
Could I
somebody
say
does
something
something.
before you do, Matthew? Is
Yeah, go for it.
one of my Buddhist teachers, two in particular, Junpo and Doshin, they have a koan, and the koan is, I'll ask you this question, Matthew. Can someone make you angry?
I'm going to say no, but I know that it's possible.
Actually, I don't know the answer to the koan, which is I'm embarrassed to say, but I think for me, the answer would be only myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, only I can actually make myself angry. It's a choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
love that because it's like, yeah, there could be a negative impact, and we could really be angry about that negative impact. But it's really a sign of our passion. What are we committed to? And to double down on the commitment and passion side and see how to navigate this. So I
Mm-hmm.
interrupted you. So let's go back on your thread.
Well, I'm glad you did because that's a great koan, man. It's so good. I used to read a lot of those. I had a book of just excellent ones, and if people don't know, they're like Zen riddle poems, and
Totally.
I call them, and they're not. It's just to make you think. It basically Zen is such an a-hole because it just like gives you nothing. It's
Right.
just like
Right.
I remember reading it in high school, and just like I always use this example of like cross your fingers, image, and then it pops out in 3D, the paintings where you got to cross your,
Yeah.
and like, but nothing ever popped. I'm just like, what do they
Totally.
mean? and,
Yeah.
and you're not supposed to know. So that the idea is to think, and what does it mean to you? And that's the beautiful
Yeah.
point. So really good ones really can allow you to think, but there is an answer to a lot of them. So
Yeah.
do you want to
Yeah.
you can add out of
What this
it?
brings up for me is like I am like if I look at my greatest passion, my greatest care, my greatest concern, clean water for the children. And as we're having this dialogue, I'm like, well, when that's getting threatened, how can I not be angry? How can I not be attached to that? Like I'm designing all of my work around, producing better leaders to have an ultimate eventuality that's more positive than negative. Like, isn't that attachment like the fuel of my fire? And I am curious what my teachers would say, but I would think that they would say, great, be passionate, even be bitter, but don't be attached.
Mm, mm. That reminds me, I'll eventually get to finishing my thought here. I was listening to Wayne Dyer do an interview with Abraham Hicks. You know who that
Uh-huh.
is?
I do.
Yes. Yeah. So Abraham Hicks, for those of you who don't know, you should know. She's a channel. She does a law of attraction. It's Esther Hicks who channels the spirit, our group of spirits, Abraham, one of the most well-known channels on the planet. And so Wayne Dyer gets a chance to talk to Abraham, and he's basically upset about Monsanto, and he's upset about because he's living in Hawaii and watching what they're doing, and then I'm totally with Wayne on this. I was like, this is pissing us off. This is not good. Like this thing is coming, and then Abraham gives those like I don't know what kind of answer it is. It's unsatisfying. and
Hmm.
mostly true, but it's like, Wayne, for the last 10 minutes, you've talked about Monsanto giving it more attention, energy, and focus to basically amplify that. What is it, the thing that you want? Because some of it is in your control. So a lot of it is out of your control. So for your thing, but it is happening
Totally.
also at the same time. So that's a bit of a mind F. I haven't really sorted that whole thing out. And then the one that it gets me is, the world, something along the lines that, the world are evil rules only when good people do nothing. And then as the masculine warrior archetype, that really
Mm,
messes with my brain, because I'm like, hey,
totally.
really? Do I sit down? Like, is it shutting down this like warrior archetype? So I don't know. I battle with that. Maybe you can help me, and we'll go down that road because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I I deal with that.
I try not to impose my own spiritual beliefs on other people because leadership and the work that I do is really spiritually agnostic. But what I will say is focus on the result you want. Like put your attention on what you want to create. So if you're having an argument with someone, like if you're coming in there to win the argument, well, guess what? You're picking a fight. You're putting your attention on how do we get the best results here? How do we repair a relationship? How do we move forward effectively? Right? And the context of the conversation is set up. Focus on the thing that you both want. The results of getting that are going to be much higher, right? When you're both
Mm,
leaning in and you're actually talking and negotiating about what you want before you actually talk about the content, so that you're moving in the conversation, which might be a difficult one, right, with a similar context and a similar orientation. So that tends to set things up well. And I think that if you looked at the ideas of manifestation that have been expressed by the Hicks, you'll see that I think it's very much consistent. Like, give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Assume positive intent, but really focus on what is it that you want. What is it that you want to create for the future?
mm, I love it. I agree with it, and so that's the one that I go with. You have another thought? I saw
Well,
your
I was
eyes.
going to go. I was going to go on to the fourth core leadership practice. Otherwise,
Okay,
we're going to
wait.
be
So
here all day.
yeah. So we'll go to the fourth. So I just want to finish the note about. So you get the feedback, okay, and the person, you ask them to share. You know when somebody pisses you off, and then you go and you tell your friends how they pissed you off?
Yeah,
All of that needs to come out, but the friend is listening to them, but that needs to come out to you. So it's like this energy, and you might
totally,
have 1 pound of energy, 6 pounds of energy, 1,000 pounds of energy. So the energy is the entire story, you know what I mean?
totally,
And so when you say that guy lets out all that steam, that was all that passion, but that was his whole truck he threw at you. The energy's now off him, and he's like, oh, and he got that energy out of his body. Now he can be receptive to feedback. But what happens is that, we get maybe 50% or 30% or 80% or even 90%. And even if you get 90% of that person's energy of why they're upset and not that last 10%, that is still friction that they're going to hold on to for a future note. So it's
totally,
better
totally.
to take the whole brick to the face, and if there's 20 bricks, get it all out. And I just see
Yeah,
they're unloading that whole story, and then that makes so much room for feedback because now they're going to feel heard. And if you
totally,
only, if you did 6 things, or there's 20 tokens of energy, or 7 tokens because it's 7 different things, or, you need all 7 or all 20 out because they're like, no, 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 we only got to 14, you son of a gun. There are
totally.
8 more things
Yeah,
that that you have done. And you're like, oh God, okay. And
yeah,
then you got to take them. And then once they're out, then it's out.
totally. So two things to say about this. One is you don't know if you really got them until you've paraphrased and got the yes. And when people start doing paraphrasing, like it's a little awkward. And so I'll often caveat to say, hey, let me make sure I understood what you're saying. Can I repeat back what I'm hearing, where I digest it and give it back from not word for word, but from my own experience of what they're saying? Um, what typically will happen if someone's angry is they'll get angrier. They'll say, yeah, but there's more than that. That's actually a good sign, right? Because it means that you've paraphrased enough, you've reflected enough that they're willing to actually give you the thing that they weren't willing to give you the first time, right? And it basically says, look, I'm willing to sit in this fire with you for the sake of our relationship, for the sake of this future that we want to create together. So let's get on the table. And then you've demonstrated that you've listened, and yes, you're going to miss some things, and yes, they're not going to have said everything the first round. So it allows all of that to come out. Now, from a spiritual perspective, right, to be able to receive that, like while you haven't said your piece yet, you know, I'm asking you guys not to defend yourselves when this is happening, right? To put your perspective and your ego off to the side, but not your physical safety. That always stays core and center, and stay centered enough to be able to listen to someone when everything that they're saying is probably going to be pissing you off and you think is wrong, right? I mean, that is a practice that's going to make you grow.
Yeah, brother, 100%. I totally agree. Uh, I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I was just gonna say one thing to get on to number 4 because we just keep going back and forth. But the paraphrase, when you use the paraphrase thing, they've never emptied the tank, and then they can clarify because their model of the world and what happened is different. So you're just locking that in. You know what I mean? You're
Yes.
just getting to that point of clarity. And if it's in a conflict situation, you're coming to coherence. So
Yeah.
if you imagine, nice circular waves, once they do the initial bomb on you, you're going from really rocky waters to, okay, there's some turbulence. Okay. And then you say, hey, you know what I mean? Did I hear this right? And then they can have that last push of energy, and they
Totally.
really, really feel heard. So that's what I was going to say about that. And either respond or go on to number 4
Yeah.
as you wish.
I will say that sometimes when, we're pretty hot-headed, or when both parties are pretty emotional, it's sometimes nice to get a third person in the room to facilitate. Like, it's asking a lot from us to be able to do that, and it's not an easy thing. We're emotional beings first, right, and logical beings second. And so, having someone else in the room that you both trust that can help facilitate the mutual understanding, super important. If it's really important to you, and getting someone that you both like and can agree on can really help things move forward. So the first 3 principles we talked about, like inspiring with a clear vision, listening with openness, and speaking with transparency, are kind of individual things. Yes, they play out in dialogue, but the next 3 are really more team-oriented. Next 4 are really team-oriented. And this next one, the 4th one, is facilitating healthy debates in meetings. Like, if you're in a company, odds are that at least half of your time is in meetings. And from what I've seen, most of those meetings kind of suck. At least they're inefficient, right, if they don't suck. But that not much happens. The same things come up over and over again. There's not a clear agreement about next steps. People's voices are not heard. Decisions are not made that can have alignment. Like, a lot of bad things can happen in meetings. And that's kind of where a lot of our time gets sucked, where a lot of the culture gets created that is not the culture that we want. And so, as a leader, not only modeling what a good meeting looks like, what good debate looks like, which we've already talked about, but also getting your people to do that. And so some basic things here. First of all, like, all meetings should have an agenda. Why are we here? What are we here to talk about? And to focus on what is the next step. It's not just a topic, right? It's the objective. What do we want to do here? Are we figuring out next steps? Are we brainstorming ideas? Are we coming to a conclusion and making a final decision? What's happening here? Because otherwise we bring up a topic and everybody has something relevant to say about the topic, but it's not moving us in the direction that's going to forward us to our objective. So just clarifying the objective. And, we might clarify the objective, and there might be a dialogue about, whoa, we can't make that decision today. There's no way we can make that decision today. We don't have the data. This person's not in the room, and we got to find out this, and this first, right? So then you clarify what the objective is. Okay, well, let's clarify next steps and who's going to do what by when. The next thing I would say is try to have a facilitator, right? Because someone who's keeping an eye on the objective and letting people know whether they're off topic or too far in the weeds, or if we're right on topic, like, that's going to make things much more efficient. Having a parking lot, or as we'd call it at Burning Man, we call it the bicycle rack, to take the ideas that are off topic but important. They're they're part of either a whole side conversation that's necessary for us to make a decision, or something else that's important but that's actually not on point for what we're accomplishing now. Having that so that we could capture those and figure out next steps about those, like what's the next meeting, what has to happen there, so that we could stay on point. But then in terms of debate, it's a lot of what we talked about, right? Is the most senior person in the room is ultimately going to be looked upon to facilitate unless they nominate someone else. And is there healthy debate? Is the person that's staying quiet in the corner of the room but clearly brooding, like, have they spoken their truth? Are they drawn out? And when people are sharing opinions, is there sufficient understanding of each other before they're pushing for specific solutions? Like there's that traffic cop notion that's so important in terms of an effective meeting. So running effective meetings, right, that sets the stage. That communicates what kind of listening are we expecting from each other? How clear are we being on the agenda and what we're trying to accomplish? Or are we just calling meetings for meeting's sake because that's basically a good next step when we don't, or when you don't feel prepared? So having effective meetings is so important, from setting the culture to setting up good debate and to setting up healthy dynamics around efficiency.
Awesome. I love it. I'm only going to make one comment so you can keep going on because you're doing great. I think that the third party is such an underutilized strategy for family conflict, relationship conflict, and
Yeah.
business conflict. Just having somebody that you trust to come in can really, really help, because then they're facilitating making sure both sides are heard. And I think that it's
Yeah.
an extremely valuable tool that maybe can be a little bit more common for people to use, activate, or employ in solving or upgrading their relationships, their business culture, and things like that.
Yeah.
So excellent stuff, man.
And I'll say that the third party is tricky to be in. When you're in that third party, you want both parties to feel supported, and you don't want to take sides. However, it's also sometimes important to present an opinion. Hey Matthew, like, I don't know if you're what you're sharing right now, it doesn't sound fair to me. In what way is it fair to you? Like, and sometimes there has to be secondary dialogue that gets created. But that's tricky stuff, right? So ideally, you have kind of this person that loves both people, that appreciates both people, and can really act as an intermediary without taking sides. But mediation and facilitation is definitely a skill set, and the more we could get that skill set, the more we're going to be practicing our own leadership skills.
I'm just imagining like a romantic relationship where the guy calls in his best friend or something. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just like, hey babe, we're gonna get a mediator for this problem.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call in my best friend here and then do that. So don't do that scenario. It's got to be a good solid third party that you both respect and wants to help you both. So
Totally.
I'm just thinking like a Chappelle skit show. Sorry, go.
A lot of times I'll say that, as a facilitator, not only do I play traffic cop, the other thing I would say that I really do is I name the elephant. Like I just take the stuff that's under the rug and put it on top. Okay, guys, for the last 2 years, you've been barely talking because of the thing that happened, and maybe we need to clean that up first before we get into this dialogue, right? Or, hey, guys, there's clearly been a loss of trust here. You think this, you think that what this person did sabotaged your career, and you think that this person backstabbed you. Like, let's just talk about this, right? So that we could get it over with, so we could actually be productive together. And maybe that history is so great that you won't be able to work together, but at least you know it, right? And you could decide now, early on, when there's less consequences, about whether or not you could work together. And if not, then we'll figure that out. But let's just get on the table to actually talk about it. The next one, number 5, is makes decisions inclusively and effectively, right? And decision making is hard, right? Everybody has different perspectives. What I love about companies is their hierarchy. Risk, for example, is a big issue, that people are going to have different risk profiles, and 2 people might not make the same decision. based on their willingness to take risks or their willingness to be conservative. It depends on a lot of individual factors there. So in a company, you could always escalate, and escalating around risk is a great point of escalation. Matthew thinks that we should go to this audience and try to get a 70% retention. I think we should go for the more aggressive audience, and maybe we only get a 30% retention, but hey, these guys are going to be our champions, right? Mine is more risky. We might not get any of these guys, but if we get a couple of them, wow, we're going to be better off, right? That might not be a decision that we could actually navigate ourselves. As long as we understand each other, maybe we need to escalate that, right? So decision-making is tough. In terms of including the right people, the more people that we include in the decision, the more input we'll have, and the more alignment we'll have, and the more resistance we'll be able to be aware of when we make a decision that might not suit everybody's interests. So we can navigate that resistance more effectively. On the other hand, the more people we include takes more time, right? Everybody wants to share an opinion, and they're going to feel like part of the decision process. So including the right number of people, being clear how the decision is going to get made, and making sure that, as we talked about earlier, that we at least consider people's opinions before deciding, and when we do decide, that we share that their opinions were heard when we make a decision that might be contrary to their interests, explain why, right? And when a decision's been made in the company or a military setting, the thing is full alignment. We don't leave this room without 100% alignment. Even if someone would have made a different decision on their own if they were making the decision, we leave this room fully aligned as a team. We don't leave this room backstabbing the decision, because then execution is going to be hard and no one's going to win. Now, sometimes maybe we back off on the decision and say, okay, let's take this next step. Let's get all aligned on getting more data, right, before we make the final decision. But getting to a clear next step where you're fully aligned, especially if you're in a team all operating, with one goal, like that unity is super important. Where we don't do that triangulation thing that Matthew was talking about earlier, where something happened in a meeting. Now I talk to John. Now John spreads the rumor at lunch, and now we got a whole mess on our hands. If something happened in a meeting and I didn't speak about it at the moment, like, okay, fine. Maybe I go speak to John, but it's for the sake of clearing my own stuff so I could go back to Matthew and have a conversation, right? We don't want all the stuff sitting out there and all this triangulation where now something's coming back to Matthew saying, hey, Jason's really pissed at you. Now, how does that turn to Matthew? Like, now he has to approach me with something that I should have approached him on, right? So it's like having those direct conversations. And when a decision gets made that you might not agree with, having the conversation up front with the person that made the decision rather than kind of spreading negative stuff around the organization.
Awesome. Yeah, those are really simple fundamentals. The way that I'm also seeing this too is just family structure, the importance of, we used to do the family meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can definitely use these tactics in small business and big companies, and they're simple fundamentals, but really, really important, and will change the game if you have that container around it. This is our goal. And, if we don't have 100% alignment, maybe if it's a certain decision, you can bar a few things off to the side and use other tactics, but that's the container. So I see it as really, really valuable. So that's all I'll say.
Let me play off that.
Okay.
I remember when I think I must have been 7. My dad came home and he said, guys, for Christmas we're going to Disneyland. Now, his intentions were all positive, but it turns out that I really wanted to go to Disney World rather than Disneyland. And my brother actually didn't want to go to either, but wanted to do something different. And, my dad didn't include us in the conversation at all. He came home and made a declaration of this is what we're doing. And so essentially, my brother and I fought the entire time and kind of ruined the trip for everybody. And I look back at that and I'm like, God, my dad had such good intentions. But if he would have come home and said, hey, guys, I'm thinking about buying tickets to Disneyland. I think that would be awesome. What do you guys think? Like, he would have heard a little bit more about what we wanted, and maybe we could have either tweaked the plans or made future plans that would have satisfied us in a different way. I mean, we should have been grateful, obviously. We were little brats apparently, but it's even little simple things like that. We sometimes want to, create good or bad surprises, but if we don't include people in decision making, and we take away their autonomy, and it's very difficult for them to create alignment after the fact, right? When they don't feel like they got to contribute something into a decision that's going to really have an impact on them.
So if you're going to do surprises for your family, get some inside information first. Otherwise, you're going to be
Totally
ruining surprises for kids everywhere, brother.
Yeah, I have to say, like, one of my business rules is just no surprises. Like, business is not a place to create surprises, good or bad. Like, let everybody know, because like even a good surprise. I remember there was a client that he had, his sales were through the roof that month, and the CEO had just told the board kind of like, hey, I'm not sure where things are going to go this month, and then this big sale came through, and they completely blew the numbers out of the water. But the CEO kind of looked like an idiot, because when the numbers came back the next month, they're like, wait, what happened? Like, you told us you weren't going to do that well this month, and then do you have any idea what's going on in sales? And it's like any surprise is generally, it might be a good thing, but surprises in general are a net negative in business, in my opinion. You want predictability.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to get within the company structure, get all of the limited surprises, because you're gonna have external surprises, like
Yeah, exactly.
the client falls through, you can't help that. So within the company, cohesive structure. I just see it as coherent principles for coherent business structure. So lay on number 6 for me.
Number 6, delegate effectively and create accountable teams. This actually goes hand in hand with no surprises, so that was a good segue. Because so often, let's say, Matthew, that you give me a task, right? And I'm going to go perform that task, and it's not looking so good, and I'm going to be late on it. I generally will be like, okay, maybe Matthew won't notice. Maybe he won't notice that I promised it to him on Friday. I'm just going to deliver it on Monday. So I ship it off to you on Monday, right? All good. Matthew, on the other hand, has been waiting and steaming all weekend because he didn't get it and redid it himself, right? Because he didn't get what he needed. Like, that's not good, right? If we want to, well, let me back up. Oftentimes, we'll relate to commitments as promises. I promised to get that document to Matthew by Friday. I didn't deliver it. I'm a bad person, right? And Matthew is going to kind of beat me up with a baseball bat if I don't get it done, right? Because I've broken my promise. Like, come on. In business, we make commitments to each other, but those commitments are ways to organize our action. It's ways to organize and collaborate so that Matthew can know that it's coming on Friday, and he can make commitments based on that to other people and deliver what his commitments are to other people. And if I'm not going to get the document to him by Friday, he's likely not going to be able to fulfill the commitments he has to other people, and I should let him know that. As soon as I know there's any risk to that commitment, hey, Matthew, I told you this was going to get done on Friday. I don't see how I can get it done given my other commitments. And Matthew might be like, okay, let's look at what your other commitments are. Or maybe I could give you more resources. Maybe I could actually do one of those things for you. Maybe we could renegotiate here. Or maybe, frankly, you don't even need it until Monday, and I'm stressing out, and you're like, yeah, Monday's fine. Awesome, great, right? But to be in communication around commitments, that's kind of step 1. Step 2 is, in most companies and most teams, there's usually some level of hierarchy. There's usually one person making a request and another person satisfying that request, right? And delegation is about really, first of all, clarifying that request. I mean, so many times I'll talk to the manager and he'll say, God, this guy Scott just doesn't do a good job. And I'll talk to Scott and he'll be like, my manager expects the world of me and doesn't tell me how to win. I turn all these things in that I think he wants. He throws half of them out. I spent all this time working on stuff that he doesn't want because he doesn't clarify his requests. Delegation is a two-way street. And leaders who basically are getting stuff that doesn't satisfy them yes, you could point the finger over there, but I think it's much more productive to point the finger to yourself and say, what can I be doing better to clarify these commitments and support my people in being successful? Because half the time it's not about the person. No, there are times it is, and we'll talk about that in a second. But delegation starts off with a clear two-way commitment, right? And if Matthew makes a commitment to me that I can see in his eyes that he doesn't really mean it, and he walks away from that table going kind of with this half commitment, it's my job to call him out. Hey, Matthew, are you in on this? Are you 100%? Because if he leaves thinking he's not going to be successful, then the odds of me getting what I want are really low, right? We want to leave the conversation with both parties saying, okay, we're both in. This might be a stretch goal, but we're going to make this happen, right? The second piece is who owns that commitment, right? Matthew just made a commitment to me to do something. I'm going to make some commitments to my people, right, based on that commitment. So kind of who owns the commitment? Let's say that I'm leaving the house for the night. I don't have children, but let's say I'm leaving for the house, and I give the babies, give my kids to the babysitter, and say, okay, here you go. I'll see you at 11. Who's accountable for the safety of those kids? Now, if I say the babysitter is accountable, I'm really failing my job as a parent, right? And no parent will say that I'm no longer accountable for the safety of my children, right? Of course I'm accountable. We're both accountable. I've asked and delegated the responsibilities to take care of the children, but we're both accountable for the end result, which is the safety of the children. Same thing with the task, right? That Matthew says yes to a request I make, right? That we're both accountable. If I hear something that gives me question about whether Matthew's going to fulfill on that task, then I should say, hey, Matthew, hey, I heard this thing through the grapevine. Should we talk about this? Do you need support here? Have a conversation. And Matthew should be able to come to me and say, I'm failing miserably at this. I need help. Can I give you a draft and get some feedback or more direction? Or I'm really not clear about what it is that you want. We need to be in dialogue and collaboration and mutual support to get that task done, because, of course, I didn't ask Matthew to do this because it wasn't important. It's needed, and we want it to be done successfully. So that's the collaboration piece. The last piece, the third part of delegating effectively, is feedback. Matthew comes back with the report. It was on time, like always, Matthew, and it wasn't what I wanted, right? We need to have a dialogue about if it was my request. In some ways, I now have authority to say where I'm satisfied and where I'm not satisfied. So let's say that I think it was a piece of shit, right? This report you gave me, Matthew, just do not cut the mustard. I'll mix metaphors. So if I take it, and a lot of managers do this, and I make all the corrections myself, right, because that's going to be the most efficient way to get what I want, and then I submit it, now two things are going to happen. Next time I ask Matthew, he's not trained, right? He knows that I don't like it because we could feel that in each other, right? But he doesn't know why I didn't like it. So he's sitting here thinking probably, he just doesn't like me. The other thing is, so he's not trained. The other thing is, next time I need a report done, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to go to Matthew, right? I'm going to go to someone who I know I could count on. And so what happens is, if I have a team of people reporting to me, I'll over-rely on half of those teams. And so their reward for a good job, a job well done, is more work. And I'm going to rely less on some other people in the organization. And meanwhile, for those people, I'm not giving them the high priority items. They're not building their career, and I'm sabotaging the relationship. And so we end up limping along, and I'm not fully utilizing that as a resource, which we don't have a lot of resources. We want to accomplish a lot. That's not a good way to go. If I'm not satisfied, Matthew should know it, right? So many times people get fired and they're surprised. To me, that's the fault of the manager, right? I work in pretty aggressive cultures that have a high bar of excellence because they don't have a lot of resources, right? These startups, they need to let go of their low performers, but their low performers should know that they're not performing well. It shouldn't come as a surprise. If I'm not satisfied, I should be telling Matthew. Now, to do that, when I am satisfied, I also need to be telling Matthew. Right? I need to be giving a full complement of appreciation and ways to improve, right, for us to continue to operate at high efficiency and for us to learn together. If I'm not doing that, we're not learning together. I've been speaking about this as a manager and direct report, but this is also around a peer relationship. If my peer in another department is not meeting my needs, we need to have a conversation. If I go to my CEO and say blah, 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 and I show up as a complainer, well, my CEO is going to go talk to Matthew now and get back into that triangle situation? No. Like, I need to talk to Matthew, and if I'm not getting what I want from Matthew, we should escalate together because maybe he's under-resourced. Maybe my priorities are different than his, and we need to negotiate about what resources are being used and how. Delegation is huge, right? Everything that we've talked about up to now is a part of delegation, right? And it's the kind of the task that if we want to grow as leaders, delegation is a really good way to cut our teeth and grow, right? Really clarify upfront, what are we asking someone to do? And frankly, it tends to be a back and forth. Like, we might not be able to clarify that. Collaborate and support each other, and then complete by offering satisfaction and dissatisfaction and get it right and get the relationship right. So I babbled a lot, but obviously I'm passionate about this one, Matthew.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that each of these points that you could do a full day workshop on because there is a lot of depth there and you have a lot of experience with it. What I really took from that segment was the importance of clear communication, overall clarity throughout the process of tasks and delegation, removing presumptions, and that creates a mutual respect because essentially a high functioning team, they have to have mutual respect and trust. And my example of this comes in sports performance. If I am on a hockey team and I don't trust the guy to do his job, and then you could go and escalate even further into the military, right? That's they're like, can you do your job, which is to get over here to push this button or to be over here to,
Totally.
shoot over here so I don't die. You have to
Totally.
have implicit trust, and that comes from mutual respect. So you it was good that you're that passionate because I was hearing all those really important things. Just for the sake of time, because I want to respect your time too. Add on to that and then give us 7 because I think
Cool.
that, dude, I should do one podcast for each one and then just like story, huge lesson, as much time as you want.
That's my next step is to do exactly that. But okay, so you played hockey, yes?
Yeah.
What position?
Center.
Okay, so I was left wing as a kid, and I remember not fully trusting my left defenseman, and so when I would get really aggressive on a breakout, like if my left defenseman wasn't good, I had to race back so hard, right, to cover part of his territory, and God, I hated doing that because it was like I got stretched thin. And it's like, that trust of like, no, you need to be back there. Like, if I'm going to be that far forward, I need to know that you're there. It just reminded me of that. And I think all of this stuff plays out in sports.
Well, it's really important because sports is a platform for that, right? For business. And that's the analogy, right? And as we spoke a little bit before, my background in sports performance, if I'm working with a CEO about the mental game, my clients and myself have probably been stretched beyond what this guy's ever had to deal with. And so you can actually take those lessons, right? So sports is that analogy where you tune up the team, then all of a sudden, it's not 5 people that are different. It's like this synergy from the coach and the system. These guys are kicking butt. Nobody knows why. And it's because of all of these principles that they're doing. It's not a sport of individuals, the team dynamic, and that's where you get into coaching and things, and you can watch it happen, and it's totally magical.
Well, ironically, the 7th principle is developing your people in teams.
There you go.
So right on target here, right? It's motivating people to bring their best, right, and offering genuine appreciation for their contributions, but coaching and support in developing their skills, their careers, their passions, supporting people from learning from mistakes. It's like someone makes a mistake, great, like it's not great for the business. Let's talk about what happened, what went wrong, and how we're going to ensure it doesn't happen again, right? But we're not beating them up with a baseball bat. There's a story of a major business loss, Like a department basically made an attempt to do something. It was in the marketing department, failed miserably, $2 million kind of gone out the window. And the VP of marketing goes to the CEO and says, okay, well, I assume you're going to fire me. And the CEO says, and some of you have heard the story before, the CEO says, fire you? I just invested $2 million in your education. Like, no, I'm not going to fire you now. You're going to make this right. Like, let's learn what went wrong and make sure that we do it right the next time. And maybe we need to bring some more supportive structure in or some outside consultants, but let's make this happen. Now, there are times, right, to let people go, and we talked about that earlier, and delegation is how you're going to find, help people, understand what their weaknesses are and dialogue about that. But then you want to develop them. It takes about 6 months to actually know you're going to fire someone. Like the vast majority of times, it could go faster than that. But if I hire a new employee and they're not doing great, like it takes them 3 months to get their feet under the ground and another 3 months for me to know that they're not doing great. So I'm 6 months in, right? And that's generally good case. But I see a lot of low performers stick around for a year or two, right? But you might as well develop your people. Like give them a chance, make them great, and your great people, like support them too, right? They have their own hiccups and blind spots, and so yes, hire competent people who fit the culture, but don't talk negatively about your people. Like talk directly to them, support them, give them feedback, have one-on-ones with your people every week, right? That's not based on projects, but based on their development, not just task-oriented, but who they are as leaders, especially if they're leading other people. Like go through their team with them. Tell me who your people are, like who's performing, who's not performing. Are you giving them feedback? Have you told this person that? Have you appreciated your people? Do they feel respected, right? But to spend time developing your people around what they care about, around what their developmental needs are, especially in the millennial crowd. Millennials, they want to grow. And if they're not growing, no matter how much you pay them, no matter how much fun they're having, if they're not growing, they are going to leave. And if you are developing your people and they're growing, they'll work harder, they'll work smarter, they'll be more passionate, more loyal to you and the company, right? That it's developing your people that really creates the bond, whether it's peer-to-peer or, manager to subordinate, doesn't matter. Having those conversations that they're growing, their career's growing, they feel cared about, they feel supported, and they feel like they're getting hard feedback. Turns out that delegation and developing their people are closely aligned, right? If you're not delegating well, you can't give them negative feedback, and you really can't develop them. So there's all 7 of these. There's a massive overlap here, but that's an important one, especially around getting to be a high-performing team and getting people to be loyal.
Yeah, man, that's really important. And I think that what you're speaking on is just valuing people and the culture. I think Richard Branson, there's a quote that he says, train and treat people good enough so they can leave, or train people good enough so they can work anywhere, but treat them well enough so they'll never leave, something along those lines. And, I think that it just shows that would be a good, if not great, just philosophy and again container to growing your business, to establishing a culture, to because if we're looking at what the organizations you're working with are the highest performers, there's no slouches in that room, there's no slouches in NASA, I don't think, or the military, or at the high levels, or at the Fortune 5 company. These are people that they call you in and say, we want to perform at the highest level. And
yes.
So then you set new standards, and what you really need is team cohesion. And so all of these principles can be applied to small business, big business, daily life, family, really powerful stuff to your own life. I had a few upgrades in just thinking about how I'd apply this to, just the things that I'm up to. And so really powerful stuff.
Nice. Matthew,
yeah,
I want to make
really.
an offer. I mean, we're wrapping up here, and I think hopefully we haven't worn out our audience here, but obviously we have a lot of passion about this topic. I'm happy to share these leadership practices. We have a self-assessment that people can do, just a little survey. It's kind of still very small, just through but it will go online at some point in the next few months. But I'm happy to send people that self-survey if people want it. I don't know how to do that though.
Yeah. Just to make sure you tell people where they can get a hold of you, where their website goes. And after, as we said at the beginning, I was listening to your talk. I got the beginning, and then as Burning Man goes, there was a connection that needed to be had. So I'm listening to your talk, but I had to go back in to sign my name to make sure that I was on your mailing list
Hmm.
and stayed connected, because, you know, what I've learned in my own studies is that the real masters and people in, let's say, leadership, personal development, spirituality, whatever, the principles are simple. They're not that complicated, but your depth in applying them and learning them and understanding them, that can take time. So in the thing that you offered us on leadership was really valuable, and I had a time to go through it. And so even these principles here, highly valuable. So definitely share, before we wrap up, just like, thank you so much for your time. If there's anything that you want to leave the listeners with, or if there's anything that you wish I asked you, and just where people can get a hold of you and this assessment. I know that you're going to work on a course and giving an offering to, empower young leaders and leaders of all
Hmm.
types, which I think would be a massive service to a lot of people out there.
Yep. Well, first of all, let me just tell people where to get this assessment. If you just send an email to my assistant, she'll respond with the assessment. I wish I could just give you a website, but it's not up and running. Um,
I can put a link in there too, so let them know, and I'll put a link in the
awesome.
show notes and SoundCloud and blog, so they can definitely
Okay.
get that.
Okay,
That'll be
great.
front and center.
And should I give the email address out to my assistant, or what would be the best way to accomplish that here?
Yeah, you can. Well, you can say it, and I'll definitely put it in
Okay.
the show
So,
notes too. So
so my assistant's name, just her email is assistant, ASSISTANT, at newberggore.com, NEUBERGGORE.com. And we will get a link up soon too, so that we could just link off to this.
perfect, cool, brother.
Um,
Well, yeah,
let me just say a closing thought here. Um, I love leadership because the world needs it, and I love leadership because it allows individual passions, people who are passionate about something, to make it happen. We generally can't make anything really significant in life happen without other people, right? So we need to inspire them. We need to collaborate with them. We need to work with them. We need to appreciate them. And all of these things are essentially communication skills. And these are communication skills that we're going to be carrying with us for our entire life. So it is not a place where you're ever great, right? You could always get better. There's always ways to improve our leadership skills. And the core thing is not to beat ourselves up, but to commit to being the best leader we can and learn, and just continually expand our capacity to lead teams. And that's going to be how we can create a lot of leverage in this world.
amazing, brother. Yeah, dude. Well, you shared a lot of really powerful and high level information. Um, it's just simple random thing that comes to my mind is that my mom growing up, she grew up on like the East Coast Canada, and they had some troubles with having young kids at that time, and one of the things that she did was uh take a parenting course. And so did my dad, because
Mm-hmm.
they and one of the main things that they learned in that course was communication, because they didn't know how to handle me or my sister,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so these principles applied to people's lives really can make a difference, and people like you really see that difference, and you see the power
Yeah.
in that difference. And as far as being able to communicate with their family, communicate with their friends, especially communicate in those challenging situations, this is
Yeah.
stuff that can change the world. And when we embody that leadership and that communication, we're removing friction, and friction creates conflict, and conflict creates obviously problems. And I hope that most people want in their hearts to move towards a world of cohesion, of peace, of collaboration, and communication is the start. And so
Totally.
really powerful stuff. I know we've spoke about you putting a full leadership thing together. I'd love to have you back on and even learn personally more about mastering communication. I've done so
Yeah.
many communication courses, and I'll do them all day, every day, because I
Yep.
know the power of them and how it upgrades my life and how it allows me to interact and make conflict almost non-existent, even though I'm dishing out, not ideal situations a lot of the time. And it's allowed me to learn how to do that. So thank you so much for your work and all you're doing, man. I look forward to
Yeah.
future collabs. And the last
Let
thing
me.
is, I
Uh,
appreciate you taking it down from the big boys and NASA and the military and Starbucks Corp and all that kind of crap, and sharing it with everybody. And that's a beautiful thing we can do with
yeah.
the internet now and podcasts and all that kind of thing.
So you keep on bringing up family, and I could tell you have really good family values, and you just shared the story about your interaction with your parents. There's one thing I would like to say about that, and I'm not a parent myself, but the when I was teaching at Harvard Law, there's a phrase, hard on the problem, soft on the person, right? And this is especially true in the home environment. There's almost never a reason to be hard on the person, right? Be hard on the behavior, be hard on the issue, but love the person, right? Whether that's at home or at work, and at work we use different language, probably not love, right? But with children, I think it's so important to not make love conditional. Love should be unconditional. You love your child, but you don't love their behavior, right? And that's going to be your greatest way to influence someone, is to just shower them in love regardless of how badly they fucked up, right? And basically not accept the behavior and even punish the behavior, right? But to separate those two things out, right? Hard on the problem, soft on the person. So family values are so important to me, and this is a good one. So I just wanted to close with that.
Yeah, brother. Totally agree. Beautiful, beautiful closing statement, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your work. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to staying connected, man.
Thanks, Matthew, for having me.
Take care. See you, everybody. Peace.